conversation with Pilvi Torsti. And Pilvi Torsti is me, and this conversation is of informal nature with very special guests. Today we have a pleasure to host Sofia Shakil, Director of the Human and Social Development at the Asian Development Bank. Before her current role, Sofia Shakil had an eminent career in the World Bank and Asian Development Bank, distinguishing herself as a transformative leader in women's economic empowerment, workforce development, education design and social inclusion in Central and East Asia. So Sofia, welcome.
Thank you so much.
When reading about your background, the question I actually first had was that what over 20 years ago brought you to this field, which requires stamina and idealism?
When I finished my studies, I was really committed to entering international development. And you know, when you're in graduate school and you think you have a master's, you believe you're going to get hired by the United Nations the very next day, and it doesn't happen like that. After a couple of years of working in the private sector, I thought, you know, my heart belongs in development, and maybe the way to do it is to look at a job back in Pakistan where I was from. And I got a job with the Aga Khan Development Network, working in the northern areas of Pakistan, remote area. And they hired me to help the government prepare a World Bank education project. They had received a request from the World Bank. It was their first ever project in the region, and they had no clue how to do preparation for such a big project. This happened to be an education project, and I was hired and plopped right into the Department of Education's offices in this area. And the rest is history. I never looked back. My heart's been in girls' education from then on.
So I think it's a very empowering message also probably to many of our viewers. So the very local community of your own. You went first out to study, you came back, you engaged, and that then actually opened doors to work also globally, but with the same themes and the same field.
Absolutely. And that experience was just so fulfilling and so gratifying because, first of all, it was working at the grassroots level, but with government, building their capacity, and also engaging with the donors, and it just threw me right into the thick of things.
Yes, which of course nicely brings us to the work of the Asian Development Bank and the ETF European Training Foundation. We have working history together. We focus on the fields partly similar in the development of the human capital, human development more generally. If you look at the regions where we have the sort of common interest, Central Asia, Caucasus, and the works you've overseen or you have seen, where do you see really impact takes place when we focus on the human development?
I think the impact happens when you're investing in programs that are embedded in a long-term strategy, a government strategy, a national economic strategy, part of national economic development plans. And as we know in this region, in Central Asia and the Caucasus, there's a rapid transformation going on. And here we're sitting in a place where the economies are changing, the needs of the workforce, the labor markets are changing rapidly. And so this is where I think a lot of opportunities lie for organizations like ADB and ETF to support national economic development priorities through workforce development.
Is there some example that would come to your mind from Central Asia or Caucasus, say government's long-term program or a very practical implementation of such a strategic program where you have really felt, okay, now we are really getting into it. This is something that I'm really proud also to be working on.
Well, let me start by just highlighting one smaller project that we're doing. This is a project to strengthen STEM education for girls in Tajikistan. Now, this is a project at the secondary level, but it's trying to improve the foundation of human capital by investing in upgrading of school infrastructure, providing laboratories, improving the curriculum, developing teachers' competencies. And it's really about creating that critical mass of girls and other students that will come out of the system and be ready to take on other challenges in their post-secondary education life.
You know, what I find very interesting from the perspective of an ETF director, where we work with a number of countries, sort of almost about 30 countries, and then also African Union countries. And you have, in a way, the same discussion now everywhere, in particular with the green and digital transition. It really seems if you use the metaphor, we are all in the same boat, that the upskilling and reskilling needs are everywhere. Do you think there is something specific in the Caucasus region or in Central Asia to focus on, or is it the sort of overall picture that we see everywhere that is more or less at the focus of the ADB as well?
On one hand, it is overall, because there's a lot of globalization that's taking place, and regional trade and integration is taking place. So there are skill sets. I mean, the challenges are shared. The other thing is that we're also seeing many of these countries trying to prioritize medical education and building a workforce for the care economy as society transitions. And so this is a big priority for the region.
When I was looking a little bit back also to your career in the World Bank, and you mentioned your work in Pakistan, when you started, I understand quite successfully actually then designing and implementing results-based financial programs in Punjabi region at the time. I was wondering first, what does it mean, results-based program, when it's funded by a bank?
Results-based funding is really about taking a government program in the sector, for example, education or TVET or health, and identifying some of the key indicators that are necessary to keep that program on track to yield the impacts or the outcomes that we want to achieve. It could be impact level results, for example, improvements in learning outcomes measured by something very tangible. It could be increased enrollment rates. It could be expansion of the health infrastructure, depending on what the program is. And then tying your disbursements to those achievements of those results rather than financing discrete investments. The other part of results-based financing is that it supports a government program. And so when you've got a government program, results-based financing also acts as a very good incentive to keep critical reforms on track, realign incentives so that they're actually making an achievement. Now, we don't finance dollar for dollar investment in results-based. So construction of a school facility may cost, let's say, $1 million, but governments do that anyways. They do construction, so maybe we don't tag that much to it. But however, some of the soft side reforms, which don't cost that much but are more difficult to do, let's say empowerment of school management committees. For that, you can tag on a higher price if certain reforms linked to that or results linked to that are placed. So in my experience, I found that it's a very, very balanced tool to give incentives and realign incentives while keeping a longer term framework on track.
In my understanding, it's about 20 years ago already that you were actually designing this results-based model, and you revisited it recently. So what did you see?
What I saw was that one of the critical reforms that we supported through that, or a result, was restructuring how private education is financed, and vouchers and expansion of public-private partnerships. And that's continued. And that's showing good results in terms of participation rates and learning outcomes. One of the things, though, more recently I've found, though, and this is where, partnership with an organization like ETF will be helpful, is that we need to really revisit what are those indicators that we tie our our financing to.
Yeah, I think it's extremely promising at the moment how the different actors, the ones that have been funding infrastructure and the ones that have been gathering evidence base on the skills development, have really found a sort of common, not only narrative, but really ways to work together to program different initiatives, even measure impact, and through that to bring about long-term sort of hope and credibility in the world that is so changing and also so uncertain, in particular for younger populations that we see in the regions where we work together. So I think it somehow gives credibility to us all when we work together and not separately. So I think it's really an achievement as such to be valued. Well, let us then turn to something that I think throughout your career really can be seen as something that you have cared for a lot, and that's the women's economic empowerment as one of the decisive factors when we look at the human development. How do you see the situation in that at the moment in the regions where you work?
I think there's a lot to be done for empowering women, especially in terms of digital literacy and financial literacy. These are two very important elements to get women to plug into the diversifying supply chains, to get them to basically enhance their livelihoods and access to markets. We've seen very good examples of women who go, through initiatives such as Women Who Code, or women who are utilizing artificial intelligence tools to, to establish their businesses and help them grow. There's a big scope for that, especially in situations where you've got a lot of remote communities, especially in, let's say, Tajikistan and other mountainous regions. Digital use of digital technology is going to be key to help women and other vulnerable populations, grow their livelihoods.
In the context of Central Asia, the Asian Development Bank is really a large donor in the education sector, and we as ETF are committed to a DARIA project, which is aiming to develop the quality and the inclusiveness of education, training and labor market systems in 5 countries in Central Asia. We work on that project for 5 years with the European Union support. Mm-hmm. What kind of results do you think we should expect from this kind of involvements?
Well, we should expect to create more opportunities for young people and give them the kinds of tools and skills needed to thrive. This region in particular, Central Asia, Caucasus, is really opening up. And I think the young people of the region will help drive the change.
Well, in this conversation with Pilvi Torsti, we have also asked our previous guest, who was Nicola Schmidt, the Commissioner for Jobs and Social Rights of the European Union, to leave a question. And he had no idea to whom he left the question. So let us see how the question is, and I will then ask you to answer for his question. And it's handwritten, so let us see how I do. How can we make ETF an even stronger instrument for Europe's role and values in the world?
I think by engaging in more partnerships, such as with ADB, but also others, in which we can leverage our partnership to help government clients really do better planning based on good evidence, based on peer learning. That will help ETF strengthen the values that it believes in this region and beyond.
Well, then I would ask you to put a question for the next guest of our In Conversation with Pilvi Torsti program. We'll give you a little while to think, perhaps somehow in the field that we have discussed, but of course you are free to ask whatever. We will not check it before the next.
I'm excited to write a question.
So here you go.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
Thank you very much.
Surprise question for your next guest.
Thank you very much, Sofia. So, dear audience, today we had as our guest Sofia Shakil, a director of the Asian Development Bank, and I think we can really pick 3 themes from the conversation. The first one is really the skills needs in the Caucasus and Central Asia, where we work together in the green and digital. Same skills that we really see shortages globally in our partner countries. The second theme, youth. Give them a say now in terms of education systems and provide the right skills for them really to engage in the world with the issues that they really care for. And the third, partnerships. By working together, we are much more than 1 + 1 would be 2, and that's with the Asian Development Bank and ETF and other like-minded actors. And I would just close by thanking Sofia for sharing her own story, working in her native Pakistan, funded by a global organization, and starting her global career from that, and bringing it then to scalable levels in the skills development, human development, currently in the Asian Development Bank. So thank you very much for Sofia, for the viewers, and see you next time.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be here.